Hey, this is Noah, or Argo. I'm the host of 10 Cent Opinions, and before the show starts, I figured I'd give you the setup to this episode. It's very, very weird episode. So basically what's happening is we had a topic. We were originally going to talk about subtlety in art and the ways that art, more specifically the ways that art subtly uh, pushes a person in one idea or another. But nobody was really having that, so to speak. It was late at night and nobody was exactly focused. And so we ended up bouncing from topic to topic, which is why the title says 10 Cent Opinions on Late Night Podcasts. Because, well, this is a late night podcast. But what we do talk about is still fairly interesting. You know, we get to talk about silence, we talk about modern art, Colton and I get into a debate about what makes something art. And of course, Xander and Colton talk about philosophy to wrap everything up. But without further ado, please enjoy this late night version of 10 Cent Opinions. Let's roll.
No, you can't you can't add things.
Well,
You
breaking
gotta
the
get
rules.
the timing, whatever.
Worst.
Yeah. And then Xander's off in the background. He might chime in here and there. But on this week's episode, we're going to be talking about subtle tools in art, like
Silence.
exactly. See what I mean?
A voice comes out from the warp, quelling the awkward silence.
No,
It's
but
pretty
why don't we talk about silence? Because there's this trend in modern media to always have something going on all the time. And I've talked about this a little bit before. But I think that's just not. I think that's restricting and it chokes creativity. Because think about reality a little bit. Most of reality is built up of long periods of quietness and silent reflection. And if you have something going on all the time in a movie, you don't have any time for the audience and the characters to reflect upon that silence. Additionally, it even makes you relate a bit more to the character because that is something that humans do. That's something that actually happens. People will stop and think about their situation instead of just going, going, going. But do you guys have any examples? This is my go-to phrase, but let's try and bring up some
examples of this.
examples of silence in movies done well, or
I
not
think
even. It doesn't have to be silence, but also just
we'll
like
tell.
moments of reflective nature.
I really do think that this is going to be a very late night episode because you can tell there's going to be a lot of awkward silences and
So
ideas that seem rambly.
reflection as in reflection of
Sure, reflection.
self-identity.
Yeah, could be that. You know, horror is pretty good at this. There's lots of moments of tension, and then the tension and release cycle, but there's a lot of silent moments where nothing is happening, but the media is trying to put you in this off-settling mood. So even though nothing odd is really happening, there's you still want to be off. Still want to fall into that uncanny valley.
Yeah.
What they're-
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what they're doing there in horror movies, and I think this is really interesting, where normally silence would be used to convey a sense of like contemplation and like kind of tie it back to home a little bit. What horror movies do is that they break from the norm, which is noise, right? And by breaking from the norm, we're put in this anxious sort of mindset of the movie, and we're waiting for like a scare or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
They use
It builds suspense.
Mm-hmm.
A game that uses emptiness and silence pretty well would be Gone Home, where nothing in that game is actually scary, but there's a lot of just silence and you're set there's a lot of stuff that's just slightly off in the house, so it makes you feel unsettling, even though there's nothing really going on.
Yeah, the game is terrifying.
It's pretty bad. I made Anna play it.
The first time you go through it, you're just petrified the whole time.
Do you guys remember? Oh, well, you guys don't, but no, remember a long, long time ago when I had the Slender game on my phone and we had Anna play it, and the first time she saw Slender, she threw my phone across the car.
Yep, it was like a Kamehameha.
Yeah, you remember that well if you remember the Kamehameha joke.
I mean, it was pretty funny at the time because we got really into that game. It scared the shit out of me.
Me too. And don't forget Dark Water.
I can't because you bring it up all the time.
I physically can't.
It's impossible. I'm gonna look
Anyways.
the movie up on Netflix, see if it's actually around.
It's not on Netflix. If it was, I would have seen it. I watch a lot of horror
No,
movies
I
on
mean
Netflix.
for like send it to your house as a disc.
Anyways, I'm gonna go back to working on our intro.
You guys have any examples though of any other examples of using silence media? Because when you start thinking about it, I really can't think of in recent art forms that use it. Like I watched what was that movie about World War II that came out a little while ago? Dunkirk, right. I watched Dunkirk a lot. And there's a lot of like oh, who's the guy who did the soundtrack for Interstellar and stuff?
Oh, Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, the soundtrack was done by Hans Zimmer, but
Yep.
it was basically just like noise, the whole background noise, which was
Yep.
never resolved itself,
Right.
musically wise, and so it always puts you on edge. But there was a lot of times where I thought that silence would have worked so much better in certain places because the movie is trying to convey this sense of being isolated in war, and there's lots of this kind of contemplation that's forced upon you by the isolation of the war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I feel like, well, using that sort of unsettling notes is certainly effective at creating this feeling of desperation. I also feel like the contemplation nature, which seemed more interesting to me, could have been far more emphasized through certain scenes having silence. Did you guys watch that movie? Or am I talking?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I saw it.
What'd you think of it?
I thought it was pretty good. There was a lot of silence though. I mean, there was a lot of not silence.
Which movie?
But no
Dunkirk?
no dialogue.
Yeah, like some of those scenes.
It was I think it was unique, but I thought it was very good at the suspense building up.
We were gonna watch Dunkirk, but not Netflix. Xfinity charges like freaking $30, so no. Unless you want to watch it in SD, which SD is for plebs.
Well, I own it, so if you really wanted to watch
Cool.
it, we could just add it to the list. By the way, Dark Water is indeed on Netflix.
What?
There's actually two different Dark Waters.
I think Dark Water
What?
is different.
One 2002,
Oh crap!
one
It's like
2005. 2005 one's unrated.
Ooh, scandalous. No, but speaking in line of World War II movies, there was a scene, and I just went looking for it, but I couldn't find it.
Are you looking on their website?
Yeah.
Because it's not on the stream.
Yeah, you have to go to DVDs.
That kind of sucks.
Why does it suck? It takes 2 days to ship it over here. But
Are you not talking about that?
because it's important.
Hey, did y'all hear my point about World War II?
No,
Or-
I heard you bring it up and then you never end it. You might have got cut off.
I got cut off. There was a scene in Band of Brothers during the bombing in what was it? What was the
The Forest?
yeah, in the forest.
It's called I'm gonna look it up. You
need to watch
continue.
that series again.
Continue.
But in that scene, characters gets hit really bad with a bomb, and instead of that moment being super loud as it would actually be in reality, it cuts to complete silence as that happens, and you to instead of being focused on the sort of chaos of the
Baston.
event
It's the Battle of Baston.
with the G. There it is.
Bastogn.
Yeah, but instead of being focused on the chaos and sort of the violence of that event, it forces you to focus on like what exactly that means for that person, because it means that they're going to have to live the rest of their life uh, handicapped and constantly feeling in this state of depression because limb is one of the worst things that can happen, right?
Mhm.
And I think that that was really well done instead of being this sort of very violent thing that causes you to war. But anyway.
Well, that's the thing about Band of Brothers is that it's not about the violence, even though that was certainly a crucial part of the war. It doesn't glorify that or make that the center stage. But speaking of Band of Brothers, there's one episode before Baston where they're running through this field, and Captain Winters goes out ahead of them. I don't remember why, but he somehow ends up in front of his troops, and he runs up the hill, and there's all these not British, there's all these Germans, and there's this quiet. It's completely silence, and it's Captain Winters looking at. It's a picture of Captain Winters, and then it pans to this one German soldier, and they're just staring at each other in dead silence, and then Captain Winters shoots him, and then all
Mhm.
the sound comes back in, and then all the other troops that were following Winters charge in and kill the rest of the Germans. But that's one scene is very impactful because they use the silence to emphasize the gunshot.
So there was a movie about 2 years ago, The Revenant. That's the one Leonardo DiCaprio was for. And in that movie, it was about this man who was trapped, or he was left behind during it was during the French and Indian War, I think. And basically, he was left behind in this harsh environment. It was really cold. I don't know where it was. Anyway, it talks about. I mean, it's a story about how he comes back to civilization in these really harsh environments where he was betrayed by his companions. And anyway, there's a ton of scenes in there in which it's just him and nature, just him and the environment and like animals and whatever.
Hmm.
And there's a bunch of silence in that. There's many scenes where it just shows him walking through the wilderness. He finds this church that has been abandoned, and he walks through it and he sees his son. It's pretty dramatic, but anyway, a lot of it is very silent. It is very silent, and I feel like that's really important because the silence kind of focuses, or it makes the audience turn towards the person. And in this story, it's I feel like it's all about this one man in nature finding finding out. So you know how people go on these things, they go on this for a month and they stay there, and then they survive, come back and be like, oh, I found myself.
Yeah, kind of like what the Indians did back in the day.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing in the movie, where it showed a reflection because it was just him and nature. You know, it showed how people like Adam and Eve, the first humans on Earth, how they acted and stuff. I think that was very reflective. And in the scenes, there was tons of silence, which I think attributed to the reflection.
I see. You know, another use of silence, and I talked about this show in the last episode, but in K-On! They use silence to ground the characters in a reality. Like, it's a show about a music club, but there's barely any music ever in the show, and it makes because the show already has super detailed backgrounds, and it makes it seem more real and something that would actually happen, which is important for the slice of life genre, and just to make the world feel more believable and the characters' actions seem more human, so to speak.
Fascinating.
But yeah, silence seems to be a way to ground and focus the audience's attention on specific things.
Right. So when you say silence, because we were talking about this earlier, so you mean, can that mean like emptiness too?
Yeah. By
Emptiness.
silence, I don't specifically mean complete lack of sound. So like
Yeah.
in the K-On! Example, they're still talking, characters still talking over it. Uh, in uh, in the Band of Brothers, I'm pretty sure there's still like the sound of the wind.
Yeah.
One thing I think is interesting is that we refer to silence in an audio sense, but I think art can also can use silence in the sense of simple. That tends to be more in line with like traditional art, like actual paintings. Is that you can have very simplistic art that still manages to convey this feeling of contemplation, whereas a super complex piece with tons and tons of detail, while super well made and masterful, it has an effect from contemplation. If that makes any sense.
Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of
So
what. Go on, Michael.
it was kind of like that painting we were looking at on Friday, right? The one that like you didn't really like. It was kind of blank, right?
Lavender Mist.
I think that was what it was called. But it was kind of blank. It didn't have a lot of shape to it. I think it looked detailed, but it was for most part blank,
Yes.
And
Empty.
yeah, stuff like that is kind of strange because one would argue, and I think that's what you argue, it doesn't take much skill, and it doesn't compare to other paintings. But at the same time, a lot of people I see that find really they take something out of it, which is kind of I guess it's from the color or something, or maybe even the void, like the empty feeling. But that's definitely a thing with that kind of art. That's just it's no shape, no details, or no composition. It's just there.
Yeah, the thing about minimalist design is it forces people to imagine things, which, like in the indie game genre, there's this trend towards minimalist design because it not only forces the designer to think more deeply about what they want to express, but it's also easier for them to create. And it relies a lot upon on the audience imagining a bit more about the world and about the meeting through them trying to imagine the world, but it doesn't require so much that like a complex piece would that a complex piece demands from the audience where you have to where it's just giving out all this information, you're trying to make sense of it all, but you can't do it, or you don't have the will to do it.
To make about that. The first one is that there was a game that came out in like 2009 or something, but it was called Thomas Was Alone.
Yeah.
That game, every character is just a geometric shape. It's rectangles and squares, and there's a circle at one point, but so full of charming personalities for these individual characters that it somehow manages to do that, even though the design is so overly simplistic. And then the second point is, I swear we're not going to start arguing about Lavender Mist again. But I
knew
think,
avoid it too, but carry on.
but I think, in the same sense that silence can cause us to contemplate on things, I think that Lavender Mist can cause us to do that in the same way. Because in the same sense that you were saying, silence and emptiness tend to be the same thing. And because the piece is empty, it still allows for that to us really contemplate on it instead of being focused on the
What does it
overly
make you
complex.
contemplate?
I mean, that's the thing is if you look at the painting, you begin thinking all these various different thoughts, and it's not necessarily look how crappy this piece of painting is, like you think, but it's more along the lines of this is chaotic, this is beautiful, there's beauty in chaos, and sort of ideas like that come from.
I don't want to argue, but I'm so tempted to.
Go for it, Don.
No, it's 10:44. I won't do that.
Till 10:46 to make an argument, and then I'm going to cut you off.
Why do I get 2
Go.
minutes?
That's fair. Go.
Well, because the thing is, it has no direction. Like I said, the meaning exists outside of the painting itself instead of using the minimalist design to focus on a specific idea. The idea that the painter wanted to convey existed outside of the painting itself. And
Of course.
the way that he went about doing it wasn't really that creative or interesting. And he tried to state that it's chaos, but the way he does it still follows a pattern. Like, we live in a logical universe. It's bound by certain laws. He was trying to prove the fact that no, it's not. It's a chaotic universe by randomly swinging paint cans everywhere and splattering. But even those paint cans that move them back and forth are still bound by the laws of logic. They still follow a certain order. So even though it may appear chaotic, it's not truly chaotic. It's still following rules and laws. And I mean, it's kind of boring. It's like,
well,
yes,
okay. You can't make the argument that something is not art or is not necessarily.
No, I'm not saying that his way. I'm not saying that it's not an interesting way of pointing out an idea. That is what it is. It's an intellectual idea that he wanted to express. But I don't think that he did it in an artistic way, which is why I wasn't considering it art. Because he just wanted to prove that the world existed in chaos. So he tried to create chaos. But the way he goes about doing that, and his meaning exists outside the painting, which, every good piece of art is intended for the art to stand alone and then convey the meaning to the audience. B, the way he did it didn't require much skill or creativity. And C, it didn't actually accomplish what it set out to do because we still live in an orderly universe. That was 46 minutes, so I can't say anything more.
I don't agree, frankly.
But why don't you agree?
The thing is, we've already been arguing about this. I think that for the claim that something is not art simply because it is not as artistic as what you would define to be artistically skillful or whatever, I would say that art in essence is conveying a message, and you could see to the point that he is conveying an intellectual message.
Yes, but
and
I think he's not doing that through art. Because, like, if I make a poster and I make the poster that says we need to reject Trump, then that's practically what he did. He just made something that is fairly easy to make and has a meaning that exists outside of the piece itself, and claimed that it was artistic. My poster, for the very same reason, I could claim that was artistic.
Well, the thing is that you keep them okay.
If what makes something art is that it's created by an artist, then everything wouldn't. A lot of things wouldn't be art.
See everything. The way that I define art is based on the actual message received by the viewer, and I've explained this before. And the reason why I don't think that a lot of the modern art, like the one in the How Should We Then Live, that was like a bicycle wheel. The reason I don't think that that's art is because I don't respect the message that's being conveyed, and I feel like that's just silly. And so therefore, as an actual viewer, I'm not going to take whatever he's trying to say in any sort of absurd and universal way.
Well, then that makes your
true.
definition of art just as relative as you claim mine to be.
What I'm saying is that you're making an absolute statement, whereas I think that your absolute statements are going to end up cutting things off from art that are. You're saying that this is not art because of X, Y, and Z, and yet X, Y, and Z aren't clearly defined.
But I'm not saying that it's bad, or that it's unintellectual, or that it doesn't even have a place in existence. I'm saying that...
But why isn't it art, Noah?
I just explained to you. I gave you 3 reasons just a moment ago.
Every one of them is not valid at all.
What are you talking about? I can back it up with other people who agree with me who are far more skilled than either of us.
That doesn't necessarily mean that's true.
No,
Because then again, I
they
could go
are
out and find
experts in
people
this
who would.
issue.
I would go out and find people who would say that it is art, and then we'd be in the same place that we are now.
But that's the point of using evidence. I'm
Noah,
saying I can cite my sources. I'm saying you cannot cite your sources.
man, you go talk to any modern art jerk, and they're gonna agree with me.
But they agree with you because they don't have a firm grounding in art. They believe that art is based on uh, theory and stuff that exists outside of the art. But I'm saying that that's not true. Good art exists, can stand alone.
Its purpose meant to convey a meaning upon something that exists outside of the art itself.
But yes. What about
Okay, so therefore, art is designed to manipulate outside things. And so, wouldn't you concede the point that an art piece could, in fact, focus more on the outside message conveyed than the inward actual painting itself?
I'm saying it's the purpose of the painting to convey that message, not some outside information.
Okay, take that truth right there. If you agree that in a piece of art is the message conveyed, right?
Wait, okay, you're saying that you create a piece of art and the message is conveyed to the audience. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying what matters and what makes something art is going to be very closely tied to the message that is conveyed to the viewer.
Okay. What about that statement? But then once again, then art is a relative term that's based on whether or not it conveyed something to you, which is not true because the skill and the process involved in the creation of the art, the creativity that goes into it, is equally as important.
Well, of course, that's what I'm saying. Is that but what matters is not, you can't make a statement like something is not art if it doesn't have creativity. But what you can say is that creativity can be used by the artist to convey a message.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yes.
Michael has not said anything in like the past 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I've been sitting here with both you and Colton muted, and with only Michael unmuted, and I haven't heard anything from Michael. Let the man.
No, I'm just getting out of the way.
Are you guys like getting into one of your superheated debates again?
Yes.
No, we'll argue more about this later. Because eventually it will come back up. We should probably get back on topic.
But we won't be as mellow as we are now, which is unfortunate.
More violent and full of energy.
It's true. Now,
yeah.
Michael.
Yep.
How do you guys feel about games that just don't have any audio whatsoever? Or not audio, but like music?
What do you mean?
I don't know.
Give us an example of a game that hasn't used music. Because back when I was younger, I often didn't actually listen to the music on a game. I would listen to whatever I wanted to listen to. For some games that works well, and for others it doesn't. Games that are focused more on you creating your own experience within the game, I'm okay with using my own music because it's me that's affecting the story. Extremely story-based, I'm going to say you're going to need the music because it's being used to further a message.
Is Dark Souls extremely story-based?
I'd say if you want to get a really artful game, it requires music in it.
Oh.
Because take something like Pac-Man. That has music, but it's not required. Like I'm sure, like I played it without music, and it doesn't need music at all. That's a video game, and I'd say that is not art. Pac-Man.
All right. The question is, why is it not art?
Because it doesn't. It doesn't have any. It doesn't help find and innovate human. It doesn't advance human thought anyway. Now, most arcade games, I'd say that. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you were defining art by whether or not something actually adds to the question of our humanity, it helps us understand ourselves, then a lot of things wouldn't be art, and a lot of other things would be art.
Yeah, but take something like if you make music and you make really crappy music, it's still called music, right?
Yep.
But it's not art. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's not
Like electronic
artistic.
music, a ton of electronic music is just so stupid, and it's still called music, and it would still fit in that category logically, but it's not art.
It's not art because it doesn't further your understanding of yourself.
It's not creative enough, I don't think. I mean, there are some, Pac-Man's creative, but
I see what you're saying. It
I
doesn't
don't know,
actually add to it.
it's not, you can't really think about it enough. You can't really, like, there's nothing to think about in Pac-Man, you know?
Yeah, beyond the game.
Yeah, in the game.
We keep coming back to this art discussion, but that is still a subjective answer for what exactly the definition of art is, right? It depends on the effect it has on the viewer.
Yeah, but no one got
Which
emotional playing Pac-Man, you know?
But you didn't cry when you got to level 255?
I'm pretty sure I remember Danny telling a story about like the first time he played a game. He was playing it with his dad, and that sort of sparked his whole interest in sort of video games and where it got him today.
Danny
I
from
think,
Game Grumps?
and I think that by this definition, that means that to him, Pac-Man is art.
Yeah.
Um,
So that would be, how do you...
Yeah, but should it be art?
I think...
Because I feel like if you do it, I would say I would say calling Pac-Man art is lowering the standard of art, and I don't think it should
Here's
have.
the thing, though, is that what is the standard of art and what should be a standard of art?
Colton,
There's a piece.
That's what we've been trying to get at.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't been listening, but just listen to my point. Okay,
Okay,
I took an art class like a couple months ago, so I know my shit. Okay.
All right.
So basically, there was a piece of art that was auctioned, right? You know the infamous white line on a black canvas, right? That sold for like $3 million.
Yeah.
So basically, people keep saying that it's stupid and that it's not art, right? And that's kind of the whole point of the painting, is that the painting is made to challenge what art is and to challenge the standard of art. So is that stupid golden urinal at that one place.
Right.
It gives everybody the question, when does art stop? When does something stop being artistic? And those are just two examples, but I just thought that was really interesting. That you kind of start getting into the question of what the heck is art in the first place, right? Why do we call it art? What's the purpose behind art, right?
Yeah.
Which of course has been what you guys are talking about the whole time, but I just thought that I'd add a couple examples.
well, that kind of poses the question of like I was just sitting, I wasn't listening to what you were saying. I was thinking of my own idea. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that kind of speaks to the idea of like, what if the definition of art is the conveyance of an intellectual idea or of an emotional idea, not an intellectual idea.
But it can be done through an intellectual way, which doesn't actually change the definition. Sorry.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like if we say that if something is art because it pushes the intellectual bounds of what is art, then we can say that that's not art because it doesn't further an emotional message. If we are going with this definition,
So,
which I don't know if I agree with yet.
how do you know whether something or not is emotional? Because that goes back to what you said about Danny, was like, if you were to play Pac-Man and that's what started it off for him, that would be emotional for him. Or, because I don't want to agree to the fact that art is based on the personal perception of whether or not it invokes some emotion. I think art's end goal is to do that, but I don't think it's defined by the emotion that it invokes. I think it's defined by the way it's created. And
Not define something based on the way, based on the outcome it produces.
I said we shouldn't do that.
No, but That's what we do. It's
How
like
so?
we can't say that we define something based on. I guess we can do it either way. You
We
can define
don't
something based on how it's
define
created.
oxygen as H2O, even though it
Hey
will be
Xander,
broken down.
that plays into that plays into Plato's ideas.
You know what? I made references to philosophy the whole last time, and I was mad that Colton and Michael couldn't get it because I was like,
Noah and
I
Michael.
guess that's just the one that unifies the many. They were like, what? I was like, damn.
You just need, you just have me like a
We
laugh
even
track
talked
of
about
me laughing.
the allegory of the cave, too.
It's true.
I missed this episode.
Because you were busy with your mom.
Yeah, you're too busy doing stuff with your mom.
You were too busy
Nerd.
helping your mom, nerd.
Fucking idiot. He's got a life.
Oh my gosh, my laugh is too loud. I'm gonna wake up my family. Anyways, but
We'll
yeah,
be wrapping
you
up
you
soon.
also want to tell our audience about the grade sizing contest that Colton and I had?
Yeah, we just had like a big what'd you say, dick flipping contest, Noah?
I said flip your dicks out so we can measure them already.
Oh yeah.
Philosophy style.
Yeah.
Thales declared that all is water.
You guys were comparing your grades.
Name the other two major statements that Thales said.
I imagine like a flopping sound on the desk.
Boy, you aren't answering my question. Name the three statements that Thales can be contributed to.
I just imagine that. There's a Game of reference to that too, where like they're talking about it, and the guy just keeps like flipping like just slapping the bed next to
You're
him.
avoiding the question.
He said a lot of things, Xander.
No, he can be contributed to three statements in one question.
What the frick are you even talking about?
1. All is water. 2. All things are full of God. The magnet is alive the magnet is alive for it moves iron. And 3. All earth floats on water. And that philosophy has several contradictions in itself, and I'll explain why in just a moment. The question that he asked is, what is the one that unifies many? And his answer was water. What all is, what connects everything together. That's the first philosophical question. Thales is considered to be the father of philosophy, and he was born in the seaport of Miletus, which is a trading center. And it was the birthplace of philosophy because lots of people there came from a bunch of different places, and they were also all very rich. And so they had lots of time to talk to each other. And yeah.
I don't think we're using the same textbook, Xander. Because we
Philosophy,
talked about
9th edition?
No, ours is the world history of philosophy. And
Wow, what a nerd textbook. Yeah, I was wondering why you were spouting nonsense at Noah's movie watching thing. I was like, what the heck is he talking about?
Yeah.
All right. Let's wrap this up here.
No, man, we need to have another episode on philosophy.
We only talked about Thales for like 15 minutes for one class, and we only talked about the one is the many with the unifying idea of the water, but we never talked about his other ideas.
We can have a philosophy episode.
Who is
that would
you guys even study Heraclitus?
Why not? A philosophy.
Yeah, we did.
Art.
What did you guys say about him?
We all just we just had one big pre-Socratics lesson, but we focused more on Plato and Aristotle.
Huh. You guys are weird. So then, can you explain to me more about the unmoved mover?
Are you talking about Aristotle's idea or Heraclitus' idea?
There is no unmoved mover in Heraclitus' ideology.
Ladies.
Or philosophy, whatever.
Ladies.
Let us finish the dick measuring contest, Noah.
Fine.
Basically, it speaks to the idea that everything is going to be an intermediate action, and therefore there must be something which set everything into motion. That also speaks to the idea of the cosmological, logical reasoning of why there must be a God, which is really interesting.
Nerd.
You waited for him to say
Nerd.
We just talked about how the unmoved mover is basically the reason behind all change in the universe, Because Aristotle was kind of pissed off at Plato. He was like, Plato doesn't explain how change. Why are you laughing? He's like, Plato
It's
doesn't
not
explain.
true. Because you ever go like, oh, Plato didn't do this.
Plato didn't explain how change works, because how can you have a realm of unchanging forms affect the ever-changing world, right? How does something that is the form of brick change into form of dust? How does that work? That isn't explained in Plato's
Science,
ideology.
bitch.
That's not science, it's philosophy.
Shut up. Are you guys done? Can you put your dish back in the
So
sink?
Did your professor give you the spiel about how like everything is philosophy on the first day? That's great.
Kind of. Actually, no. In our class, we separate normal ideas from philosophical ideas, and we say that the reason philosophy is special is because everything is not philosophy. So take that.
Oh
You
my
just blew my
gosh.
mind. I imagine that like me and Xander are like on a date, and you guys are just in like the back seat going, like, "Oh, just shut up."
Michael and I have binoculars.
You see how I have been in and out this whole time, but when it comes to philosophy, I'm right here. Oh, do you have any more work up to the midterm?
All right, all right, all right. That's enough. Cut it. I'm shutting it down.
I was shutting it down.
All right. Good night or goodbye or see you later, internet.
It's not gonna be good night though. You post them in the morning.
I know that. Peace, bitches.
Peace.
Bye.
Then just publish this one.
Bye.